You can hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Don't see you yet, but I can hear you.
Oh,
I see you. Awesome. And you got your hat and your truth t-shirt, and I love it. And I love it. That's fabulous, man. That's fabulous. All right. I'm going to get right into it just right away. Let's see. Start live on Facebook. And where do I want to share this? I want to share this in the... Hey, my mouse is all weird, man. It's like double clicking of its own accord. So it's a little funny.
well, technology does weird shit.
Yeah, it's just they special mice that I bought. I got a whole bunch of them actually, because they have programmable buttons on them,
Yeah.
which is really fabulous. I got copy and paste and enter and backspace and so on the mouse. It's really nice, very handy. And this exact configuration they don't make anymore. But anyway, I've had them for a long time, like 20 years. It's crazy to believe that you can have a mouse for 20 years, but I have. So I've got a couple of them actually. Oh, 4 of them. So
You know what? You reminded me. I didn't email you those pictures. I forgot.
oh, please yes. All right, well, don't do it now. I'm gonna go right to the live. So
Go ahead.
if you're ready, I'm gonna hit it. There we go. Go live.
Boom, we're live. Okay.
Boom. Well, it's still setting it up. It's not quite there just yet, but
Boom, boom.
I see the screen. It says setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. So now it opens the page. So it opens up another one. Like even if you were on Facebook, it'll open up a second Facebook page. Oh man, I was reading Rachel's post. I asked her to make a post about the story that she told me in the chat. And oh my goodness, what a fabulous story, just takeaway story. That's why I wanted her to share it, you know what I mean? And it's just so fantastic. Ah man, I just love it. I just love it. That's the profoundness of when you do a takeaway. And that's the thing. When she told me the story, she told it in a fair amount of detail. But now that she's sharing that story in writing it out, there was even more detail, and it adds to it. And just so we talked about aggression, how to deal with it, and she gets teased a lot. She's transgender, and people are mean and nasty because of it, all this stuff. So I was saying, there's other ways to deal with it instead of just reacting in the typical response of being, like counter aggression and stuff like that. It's not always either fight or flight. That was the conversation. But I wanted to take it to that next level. When she told me the story, to say, man, Rachel, you got a profound gift from the universe way back when in high school already, in that there was a third way or extra ways, a more way, in other words, of dealing with it. So to me, the story that Rachel shared, it's a story about how the universe works, about how we get these gifts, these lessons of awareness, and she didn't kind of click at the time, how to use that lesson, but she is now, so it's just huge, longer term, it's just profound.
This might be a different perspective, but if people are treating, would have Rachel been cueing people to treat her that way?
We spoke about that. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because
yes,
that can be a hard thing. You know what I mean? To know that you might be doing that, it's not easy to do that.
Yes.
It's like, well, it could be happening.
Yes. And that's what, right.
Because it could have been from her own insecurities.
And she acknowledges that. She said, yes, that is a large part of it. And it is a powerful factor. Now, we have to be very careful. We have to be very discerning here. And I pointed this out in the conversation too. But, there was a lot of breakup, so it might not have come through clearly. So I'll reiterate the point. Yes, we do cue. If we walk around as a victim, we're going to invite aggression. Here's the thing, though, especially when something sensitive like transgender, you can be completely at ease with it yourself. You can be fully confident. You can be completely independent in your own being about the whole issue. There are still going to be people who are just innate dicks and they can't help themselves that are going to have to say something, right? They just can't help it. So we have to understand that, yes, even though we don't cue it, it doesn't mean we're going to eliminate it entirely, right? So there are still going to be those jackasses. And we just have to deal with them as best we can. Now, of course, there's also the warrior strategy, as a spirit warrior being, having that mindset of looking ahead. our strategy is to see trouble before trouble sees us, right? Because if we can see trouble before trouble sees us, we can get out of the way pretty easy. So that we can use the awareness of anticipation and looking ahead to avoid much trouble and be strategic in that way. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah, the point I want to make though is that cueing and how we cue the world is profound, and how it affects things. It's massive. It's unbelievably huge. We also have to understand that it's not a 100% deal, right?
Yeah. Right.
Right. All right. So Ryan, I'm gonna get right into it with you. I'm on the chat with you for a very particular reason. Just for those who don't know, in the group, we're sharing this in the Sassy group. So just for those who don't know, Ryan is doing the Way of Impeccability course, our Way of Impeccability course. And it's really, we're having a fun time, really awesome time. And it's just most fabulous. But what I'm keen with, Ryan, when we have our takeaway sessions and we chat, we interact and all that, you and I, and with Janelle as well, Michael, with everybody being there, all the participants, we have this incredible, fantastic time. But I wanted to share some of that. Particularly, you've said so much stuff to me that I'm keen for you to share. Particularly, I want you to share what you're getting out of the course. What's like valuable to you, what's been awesome to you, what's been worth it to you, what you not just have gotten out of the course, but are getting out of the course. Just kind of a status update of essentially a celebration of what you get out of the course. Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot.
I know.
I mean, it's hard to even like
just
pick
start
one thing.
anywhere.
You know what I mean?
Nah, don't do one thing. Just start anywhere and say them all. Don't worry about it. Just whatever comes to mind, share that and let it lead to the next thing, and just keep going. No problem. Just something that's been important to you, that's made a difference to you,
I guess
valuable to you.
the one of the main things is a deeper understanding of who I am. Right off the bat is what I would say, mainly because of the takeaway sessions, I would say, that we do.
Yes.
In the interaction between me and you and others in the group, I've never had that in such a way to where I feel like, because it's like that mirroring effect. We talked about how I'm seeing myself in you and these other people, and it's parts of myself that I've never seen before.
Wow.
It's like looking into a mirror, but it's like a really deep, dark mirror where I can see way down, into like the depth of my soul. And some things I like what I'm seeing, some things I'm liking, and some things I'm not liking.
Wow, that's powerful.
So it's helping me grow as a person. It's helping me to learn who I am, really, like who I am, and helping me to grow into something else. Like I'm becoming more than I was before. Like what you said, that 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = more. That's exactly what's happening. So it's funny. It's like what the course says it's going to do, that's what it's doing. You know what I mean? It is what it really. It's kind of it's really simple. It's super simple. Like basically, like the power terms. I really enjoy those terms because I understand that our minds are like a fancy computer, and they need to be tweaked, or they can be reprogrammed. They can be deprogrammed and reprogrammed. So I'm finding that I'm actually becoming something different by my mind being reprogrammed by using these power terms that we're using, that we call it the power diction.
Yeah, dictionary of power. Yeah.
And what's funny is I find myself using these words. Like we just started learning about these words, and I never said them out loud ever in my life. I never even used these words before, ever. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I'll look at something, a word will pop up, and I'm like, oh, that's impeccability, or oh, that's appropriateness. The one, but you're right. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, wow, that's weird. You know what I mean? It's strange how that works. But appropriateness, I'll say, I'm learning how to be appropriate the most right now. I'll say that one's really something that I guess I needed to work on. You know, I needed more of how to be appropriate. And what does that even mean?
Exactly.
You know, what does it even mean to be appropriate? I don't even know if I never even used a word in my entire life. So how do I even know how to be it? You know what I'm saying?
Why? That's the power of it. You thinking about it. And that's already the start. You know, of course, as we go through the course, we'll flesh out more and more what it means. But you thinking about it, that's the start. That's the power. That's how you change the brain, right?
But that's what's it. Right. And it's literally the word programs you to become something different.
Wow.
So literally you're becoming the word just by thinking about it and saying it and looking at it, like the emphasis thing that you guys teach.
That's what I was waiting for, that word emphasis. Yes.
Right.
Capital E, emphasis. It trains the brain. It literally rewires the brain.
Right. And it's like just a little simple thing.
Yeah.
But it's huge because like when you're seeing the word, writing the word, it like really sticks it in your brain, you know, and you think about it more because it's been emphasized, you know, with a capital letter. Exactly. And it's just a simple thing though. And that's what's interesting. It's so simple. Sometimes it's like, oh, that's it. But it's a lot more than that. So yeah, placing the emphasis on the words and retraining the brain, it works. You know what I mean? It is what it is. And when you find yourself using these words, you find yourself making different choices too, because like for instance, you'll come upon a situation, like an everyday situation, let's say, and maybe it's similar to a situation you were in before and you responded one way before, but after you start emphasizing these certain power words, right? Power terms, your brain will bring up one of these terms, right? That's right for the situation. And you might react differently based upon that.
Right. Because, right. Exactly.
You know, you might think, oh, is that impeccable? You know what I mean? But you wouldn't have thought about that before.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
And you might not even know what impeccable even means all the way yet, but just hearing yourself say it,
right?
Like part of you is understanding it, and you might not subconsciously. It was consciously. You're like, I don't even know what it means all the way, but you're thinking about it. You're at least thinking about it, and you're like, is that impeccable? And then you can answer yourself yes or no, and then you can make a decision, you know, based on that. But yeah, it's super interesting.
It is, you know? And the key that makes it valuable is that shifting of attention. Sorry, I lost you there, Ryan.
Or like you say, or is that the same as the perspective shifting?
Yes, exactly.
The attention shifting?
Both together, right? So perspective gets us to look at things from a different angle. But what makes it so valuable is that when just using the word, it now focuses our attention on that concept. Right. So when you say and you use the word appropriateness or impeccability, suddenly everything that's connected to impeccability and appropriateness, in other words, the entirety of the course, suddenly comes into play and it starts to happen in your life. You start to act according to it. So it's not just a matter of shifting your attention, but through that shift of attention, you get to change your behavior. And that's the profoundness of it. That's
Right.
why through the simple technique of, yes, it's vocabulary, but it's more than vocabulary, because those terms are power terms. They go in that dictionary of power. So they're conceptions, really, power conceptions. They're conceptions of moreness.
They're alive. They're alive.
They're alive, exactly. And they keep on being updated. It's not just a simple word, because through that, you know, there's so much that goes into what appropriateness is. Big deal.
You know how some people say, some people use simple vocabulary and terminology, and then other people will say a word and they're like, wow, that's a big word, because it sounds fancy. Well, it might, because it has a lot of meaning. Well, these words, you would call them big words. And we say they're big because there's a lot going on there. You know what I mean? There's a lot packed into that.
Profound words rather than big.
Yeah, profound word. Mm-hmm. And it keeps unpacking itself.
Yes.
It's like there's not really an end to the meaning. It can mean like a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Ryan. I love that, man. That's what makes them so magical, you know. And these words, like you said, packing and unpacking it. And I think we mentioned, we talked about this in the course, in that it's like the computer files that you load onto your computer when you first install a new software. Those are called cabinet files, and they self-unpacking files. They self-producing files. In other words, in the same way,
like an application.
Right. Yeah. But you don't need to add something from outside. You just click on it, and it has everything contained within it to flesh everything out, to fill out everything that you need to know and do. Right. Now, in the same way, these power conceptions, they are self-telling stories. Yeah. So when you think of appropriateness, you automatically have to think, well, what am I trying to achieve? Because, well, you know, if I depending on what I'm trying to achieve, my appropriateness is going to be completely different, right? So that's the first thing. So you have to think of what your goal is, what your motivation is, what your intent is, what you're trying to do. Then the next thing is well, in what context? Because, you know, like if I'm trying to look cool or trying to be happy, you know, and the context is a funeral, well, that's problematic, you know. Same thing if I'm, you know, all sad and you know, reflective and all that, and I'm at a wedding, well, that's also going to be so not necessarily appropriate. So context is very critical. But you know, not to get into appropriateness itself, I want to say that automatically when you think appropriateness, it automatically cues that next thought, which is, what am I trying to do and what's the context? So automatically you're now focusing on your awareness, which is to say, what am I doing, which is your intent, your motivation, your goals, and the context. So you're aware, you're paying attention. So automatically just bringing the concept, the thought of what is appropriate, that question automatically brings these answers. And from there you go further. And then it's pretty easy to figure out what it is. Now, yes, it can be, you know, it can get more involved than that as we get more sophisticated in what we do and we get strategic and all the different options. But nonetheless, you know, you have a starting point with which you can somewhat determine your behavior. And, you know, I speak to a lot of people, and you especially people in work situations, but what, you know, I didn't know what to do. Just ask the question, what is appropriate? Just that question already changes things. Yeah.
And I think it's appropriate, like you're saying, to learn how to pause too in that moment. So we can say capital P, pause would be a good word.
Absolutely. Where your notes, please. Where your notes, please. Add that to your dictionary of power, please. You don't have your notes? Ryan, you always got to have the notes, man. Always. Oh, you got them. Oh. Hey. The notes are really powerful. Yes.
Just saying, I think that could be another.
Yeah. Or actually,
power.
Right, Ryan, call it the power pause, because that's what it is.
Power pause.
The power pause. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
The power pause, because there is power. Because you've been correcting. Through correction, I kind of learned that, you know,
adjustment.
Taking notes. Because you're like, it's okay to pause to take notes, because it's good for the group, because it gives us time to like sit and meditate, you know, in whatever we were just saying. So the power pause, there you go.
Yeah. And it gives that little bit of opportunity for that concept, which is it's a power concept, the new learning, the new awareness, the new thing that you want to make your own. It gives it time to settle into the body.
Right. And basically, you know, like you said, we use these words out of habit. They're like filler words, but I think we use them because we're uncomfortable or nervous, like so and and
Wow.
But, you know, I guess if you learn to retrain your brain to do the power pause, you, instead of saying, you know, that word, you do the pause,
Right.
you know, like recollect yourself and then continue.
Yeah. And
It's
again,
almost like realizing yourself for a moment. It's like you're like taking a deep breath and kind of getting your power back online. You know what I'm saying?
And literally,
I guess
actually take a breath instead of saying, you know, or so, or just take a breath. That's
and
it.
there's power, but there's energy in the air, in the breath.
Exactly.
So you're literally
Exactly.
breathing that power
Exactly.
to put more into what you're going to say, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, very powerful. And that's something for me that I've seen that's made a very big difference to you, you know, from my takeaway. Because when we first started, you didn't take notes right away, you know, and Janelle was kind of taking the notes, and we were going very fast, and lots of stuff came. But as soon as we shifted to you taking notes, you specifically, it slowed everything down, and the whole interaction changed for everybody in the group. It was really profound. It was a big deal, you know, just doing that.
I have to have it slow way down if I'm taking notes.
And I love it. I love it. I love it. It's really awesome. Because, you know, for me, it's yes, you know, of course I'm familiar with the stuff. So it's, you know, when you're familiar with something, you're sharing it to somebody else, it's kind of obvious to you, you're familiar with it, so you go kind of fast. But when it's new to somebody else, even though it's obvious stuff, it's still new to them. And, you know, that's somewhat hard to, from my side of things, to get used to that habit. So when you guys take the notes and I see you doing it, that's why I like the video. I can see you doing it. It forces me to pause, and I love it. It's really cool. Very, very cool. So, you know, you help me too, you know, which is, that's what we were talking about yesterday, right? And something that I will celebrate, because yes, I actually, you know, this chat is about you celebrating what you're getting out of it. But a real quick celebration for me is the collaboration that's involved. You know, when we do this, the course, we do it together. I'm doing it with you. It's not coming from me to you. We do it together. And through that, we are collaborating. And, you know, whenever there's collaboration, like you said, 1 + 1 = more, or 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = more. It's always more than the sum of those ones. So we get so much more, exponentially more. It's just phenomenal. You know, it's just huge. So I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. You know, it's pretty awesome. Ryan, I also want to ask you about, because we're on our theme, our topic, right, is celebrating what you've gotten out of the course, what you have gotten out, what you are getting out. One of the things you mentioned in a celebration the one time you came on, you were very excited. I loved it, man. And you told me a story about shifting your perspective of gifts, right? The gift of, right. Well, it started, the bank and the DMV story and all that lady story. But it started with me where you said, you know what, I'm going to change my perspective. I'm going to treat things as a gift. In other words, the queuing. It's a story about queuing, right? All right. So tell me the whole story from the start. I think you were actually working in the trenches when you started that story, and then it morphed into a different story. There were two stories. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Just tell the one. That's fine.
Yeah, so I had to go to the courthouse. You know, stuff that you know you don't want to do, but you have to do. You know what I mean? Go to the courthouse, go to the DMV. You know, just punch me in the face.
Crap and nonsense.
Yeah. So I go to the courthouse and I pick up my daughter's birth certificate and a birth certificate for me because I got to get a new license. So my debit card doesn't work the first time. I'm like, that's strange. Let's just try it again. So we try it again and the payment goes through. All right, cool. You know, no big deal. Go over to the DMV, right? Wait in line. The lady's like, oh, you got a hold on your account at the courthouse from a ticket you got back in 2014. And I'm like, that's weird. I thought that was paid. She's like, you got to go back. You got to go to the courthouse where I just was at to get the receipt and then come back here. So at that point, I'm like, this is kind of like pain in the butt. You know, I'm kind of starting to get frustrated. And I'm like, no, I'm like, this is a gift. I'm like, this is supposed to happen. This is all for, you know, a purpose. You know, it's nothing. I don't have to be aggravated about it. It's just, you know, it's just part of the plan. I'm supposed to go back to the courthouse. So I go back to the courthouse and I walk up to the line where you pay tickets, and they're like, oh, you had a $2.62 balance. And I'm like, that's super weird. How do I just have like that little small amount? But it was supposed to be there for that moment. So this all could happen. Now me, when I'm in the courthouse, you know, it makes me a little nervous because I've gotten into a lot of trouble in my past with the courts. You know, I've never had good favor with police officers, courtrooms. It's always been a bad situation every time I was in there. So, you know, I have this fear, and she's like, oh, just pay the fine and we'll give you the receipt. I said, I got my debit card. And she's like, it's a $5 fee just to use your debit card. I'm like, $5? She's like, you know what? She's like, I'm going to get this waived for you. And I'm like, really? So she had to have a judge sign off on this paper to waive this fine. And to me, this is a big deal because this is the first time in my entire life where ever something good happened to me in a courthouse. Okay. Yeah, it was only $2.62, but the amount didn't matter.
No, it's profound.
And this girl, she couldn't find the judge. She was on the phone. I mean, it took her 10 minutes, you know, and she's like trying to call another judge. She was working so hard for me just for $2.62. Right? Wow. It was unbelievable to me. And it's just, and it was weird. Like, I'm like, wow, like the whole time it was happening, and she didn't even get them to sign off, and she still waived it. She's like, oh, we'll sign it tomorrow. I'm like, cool. So I'm like thinking, man, this is like a miracle to me.
Magic, man.
I go back to the DMV. We do all our thing. Something told me, oh, you better check your bank account. So I checked my bank account. It's $30 to get the license. I only got $27 in my bank account. I'm like, oh, shit. And she's like, oh, we'll take a check. And I'm like, oh, thank God I brought my checkbook. I'm like, I'll just write you a check. But the reason I didn't have the money in there, a payment came out the day before that I had no idea was going to come out. Like, wow. This payment came out. It wasn't scheduled or planned, which I had to call about that later. So that's why the money wasn't there. But here's the interesting part, the hindsight. And this was a little miracle too. When I was at the courthouse earlier and I was paying for the birth certificates, it was $31. Okay. Mm-hmm. Remember I said my card didn't work?
Right.
Well, it didn't work because the money wasn't in there. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't aware of that, you see?
Right.
I wasn't aware that this payment came out. So I thought I had $227 in my bank account. So that's why I'm like, oh, just run it again. The money, I even told the lady, the money's in there. I'm like, I don't know. It should work. And it worked. And it went through. And it should not have went through.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Wow, you didn't mention that the first, oh, wow.
Right, but in my mind, I knew, I'm like, there's money in my bank account. Run that damn card again. Because it's supposed to work. Because the money's there. But the money wasn't there.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh, it's wild.
But because I believed it was there, it made it work. And it
right.
I did a debit transaction, and it should have, it shouldn't have worked.
Right. But the whole thing was when what we'd spoken about before was about changing expectations, and instead of looking at life as the series of problems, to look at it as potential gifts of learning and awareness. And
well, that's why that girl,
right, exactly.
Just because, you know, and who knows, but if my attitude would have been different, like a fearful attitude, it might have not turned out so good.
Exactly. It was a story about cueing and cueing magic and making space in your life for the unexpected. It's two magical things, right? And that profound transformation of that lady's attitude, and she went out of her way to help you and phone the judges and everything. I mean, it's a completely irrational thing. Right, right.
Crazy.
Right.
And then the other magic was my belief.
Exactly.
That money was there. It made it there.
Yeah, let's hope we can have more of those. Right.
I shouldn't have been able to buy that.
Right.
The whole allowed me to get it.
Right. The whole story
and
was.
And then the contrast. There was a contrasting story with Michael, my buddy.
Right.
So on the same day, I told him about that night, and he's like, "That's weird. I had the opposite happen to me today." Where he went to a gas station to pay for something with change, and he was embarrassed because he was paying with change. So he's like, "Oh man, this lady probably isn't gonna like this because she's gonna have to count all this change." Blah 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 blah. And guess what? He was 1 penny short. She wouldn't even spot him a penny. She's like, "Go out to your car and get me that penny."
I love this story.
Probably because you're already thinking bad shit.
He was expecting her to be crappy and be negative, and that's exactly what he got. I love it. I love it. It's profound. It was a magical day, and we were talking, right? And that's what made it so magical, Ryan, was that before that, you know, the takeaway session just before that day, this came after the session where we'd spoken so specifically in detail about cueing and about expecting magic and about being open to more and how the world relates to us and all the stuff that's involved with this. And yeah, you guys came and you had these two like fantabulous examples. You know, one is like Michael's, it's so funny and ridiculous. But, you know, that's the thing with Michael, too. You know, he's got that humor going on. So, of course, it's going to be funny. And, you know, yours has got all that complexity and details. Man, they both just perfect stories for each of you. Exemplifications of learning, right? Yeah, just huge for me. Just huge.
Right. But I wouldn't have, like, thought that way unless I was, like, learning things from the course. Because of I was learning new concepts. It helped me to apply what I was learning to a real life situation. And I was just kind of trying it out. I'm like, okay, well, let's just see if what I've been learning, let's apply it and see if it works.
Yeah.
And it works. So I'm like, oh.
The rule zero, right?
Rule zero.
Which is?
I don't know.
Belief. You do know, Ryan. You mentioned it to me yesterday. You said, belief not required. Rule zero. Right. Belief not required.
I forget.
That's all good. That's all good.
What we call it. I've only heard that. I'm trying to connect the belief or rule zero with belief not required.
Right. Yeah.
My brain hasn't.
Right. Yeah. I just call it rule zero because of, you know, that project.
You don't have to believe in it for it to work. Yeah. You just have to test it out for yourself. You just have to try it.
Yes.
And that's really all you're, you know, required to do is just test it out. You know, just try it and see. And if it doesn't work,
okay. And you know, Ryan, when you first told that story, you didn't specifically focus on that. You were focused. We're talking about application, right? Because it was a takeaway session, right? So, and what you came with, you were very excited. You said, you know what? I went and I tried this out. I tested it out, and what you were focused on was testing the expectation of getting gifts, of things being a gift of learning. Yep. But you were also doing something else. You were also putting into application belief not required. and just testing things out, which is profound. And Rachel and I spoke about this earlier too. So it's kind of cool, the connectivity that all we have to do is just sometimes we just have to make that effort to just test it and apply it. Whether we believe or not, sometimes things work. And then what's even more magical is really that they continue to work and you can continue not to believe. It doesn't make any difference. Stuff can work. Whether you believe or not, it works. It's like gravity. You know, some people don't want to believe in gravity. It keeps on working whether you believe in it or not.
Yeah.
So that's pretty wild to me. You know, I love that. I love that you were applying so many things. It's all wrapped up in there, you know, and through application, through doing, you got to it. And that's the key, because of course, as we like to say, right, without application, it's all meaningless. You probably heard that I don't know how many zillion times by now already. But that was what you were doing, applying.
It's true. Well,
that's the magic of what we're doing, is that application, right? That's what makes the difference in your life, the application.
Well, it feels like, you know, I'm just following the rules, or kind of.
Yeah.
Or like, this is the law, and I'm just, when you follow the rules, you get rewarded. You know, it's kind of like a universal concept.
That's the point. It's your rules that you're following, because it's not my rules or anything. It's yours. That's the key. I want to make that very clear. The course is not about a whole bunch of rules you got to follow. It's about figuring out your own rules. You made that rule your own, didn't you?
But that's what I mean. Like, you know, people, it's like, I'm not going against myself or my own conscience. Like, I know I'm being impeccable. Okay. So I know I should do this. So I do it and I get rewarded for it. But if I tell myself, maybe I probably shouldn't do that, and I do it anyways, well, I get in trouble for it. You know, I like spank myself.
Yeah,
you know
the universe comes and gives you a smack. Yeah.
Right, basically. But that's what being impeccable is doing the right thing doing the appropriate thing at the appropriate time, in the appropriate place.
And it's doing what's right according to you, not somebody else, according to you, your own inner conscience and self, right? Not somebody else's, because if you're living according to somebody else's rightness, that doesn't work. That's just a mess. Right. No, it's not real. You feel like a hypocrite. You're not real. You're not connecting to what's truly you and yours. And it never really belongs to you. And we have this hollow life when we live that way. You're doing what's right according to you, right?
No one else knows what's good for you but you.
Exactly.
But I will say, you know, we can, like you said, we can share our experience of what worked for us or what didn't work. And then based on that other person can see if they want to follow in your footsteps, maybe, and try what you tried, or not try what.
Exactly. Or use a little part of it, or change it, or adapt it, or something.
Whatever.
Right.
No. It's all good.
They can use it or not use it either way. It's up to them. Free choice. Right. Yeah. Sharing is very powerful. Very powerful.
It is. Another thing I'm getting out of the course is humility. I don't know if we talk about that.
Well, we'll talk about it again. You know, the stuff we can talk over and over and over again. Never gets old for me. I can hear it all day. No problem. So yeah, go ahead about the humility. I'm listening.
Humility and like patience. Those two things.
In what way specifically?
Just learning these terms like impeccability and appropriateness. Like I said, it's shown me when I'm not being appropriate and when I'm not being impeccable. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so that side of it too. And when you're shown that and you see that inside of yourself, it's like, ouch, you know, like, you know, a little dagger, which can cause you to become more humble You know, like you didn't think you were as good as you thought you were. You know,
because of the stretching of your awareness, right?
Right. Exactly.
Those power terms, all the concepts and all the stuff that we deal with, they really opening up the awareness. So it makes us aware, really, and that through that awareness we become more humble. Which is awesome, right?
The light
Right.
shines on the darkness in your brain.
Right.
You know, there's all these little dark corners in there.
Exactly.
Showing you.
Exactly.
You got all these little monsters in there. So,
right.
So there's that, which is a good thing.
Right.
It's not bad. It's good.
You said humility
and grow.
And patience. We spoke about your humility before. We've spoken about humility a lot, but you never said patience specifically before. You know, patience is a superpower, as we like to say. But what specifically connected for you in terms of patience?
Because my brain, I like to make plans, and I like to think I'm in control of whatever it is. I like to be in control of everything in my world, and just as I'm going through the course, I'm learning that, you know, in just life in general, I'm not really in control, and it causes you to be patient because you learn that you really can't get what you want whenever you want. You have to wait for it. Like the universe, for whatever reason, it makes you wait.
That's profound, Ryan. That's profound.
And this is just my own personal experience.
That's what makes
I've made a lot of different plans, and the other day I was making plans. I'm like, oh, it would be cool to go do this or this or this, just because I had a nice idea. And I'm like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be neat if we go do this? And I start looking into stuff and planning stuff out and researching. I'm like, oh, this would be so awesome. And then I realize, I'm like, man, I've done this so many times before and it never worked out.
Oh man.
So
that's a breakthrough. That's a breakthrough right there. That's a huge breakthrough.
Yeah.
Changing your patterns. Isn't that precisely what we're about in the course? Changing the patterns and habits, your usual way of being, which hasn't really been working. And now you're shifting and you become aware of those patterns, and that awareness allowed you to change it. That's a major big deal, Ryan. Wow. That's huge, man.
But I'll say this, don't expect to like be super happy when you
even though we have so much fun, it's unbelievable. But I hear what you're saying. I understand where you're going. I mean, keep going.
And you're not going to be like depressed forever, but maybe for a few days, you know, for 3 or 4 days, I was really down in the dumps. I was sad and depressed, not because it was woe is me, but because I'm like, oh man, like I didn't know I was that sucky.
I love it. I'm laughing because there's so much more to this, and I'll elaborate. No, keep going.
But it's only for a little bit, you know. You're sorrowful and you're not happy but once that passes, it's like this weight or this burden is like lifted off of you, and you become lighter, and you feel different in it's like now you're different. It's like you just cleanse yourself of something. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, let me do a takeaway on what you've said there, right?
Yeah.
Just to re-express it, see if I understand you correctly. So you're saying that what happened for you is you went into the course and you were like, you had a lot of euphoria and there was a lot of joy and you were like really on top of the world. And I remember like the first week or two, right? It was really profound. It was like really huge. You were very high on what was going on, right? And then like, I don't know, you had this dip and it was kind of down. You didn't want to interact and, you know, things just like you said, what you just described, you had that down spot. But then you came out of it and it was like a weight was lifted. And see, the reason for that, Ryan, in my takeaway, it's what's on your T-shirt there. Step back a little bit. Let's see your T-shirt. What's on your T-shirt? Truth. There you go. Truth. There we go. Okay. I don't know what about the rest of it is, but okay, just truth.
Soul armor.
Oh, soul armor. Exactly. Truth is soul armor. All right. So what happens, right? You started the course and we connected to so much, especially with when you started, and then Janelle came in and, you know, Michael came in, and we had these fantabulous conversations, and man, you guys pulled so much out of me, man. We just shared so much, and it was just kind of a bit of an overload of stuff, but that was just because you guys are so earnest, and you had that sobriety and that eagerness, and you were really into stuff. And it was really awesome for me too, right? But the result of it was this overload of truth. And what happens with that is really, like you said, I'm connecting this back to humility now. So through that awareness of all the possibilities, all the openings, all these paths of potential, and all these avenues of fantasticness, right? And awesome. All of a sudden there's the brain that says, yeah, you know, but wait a minute. And it starts to make the consequences and the implications of that. If there's all this more, suddenly by implication, what I had before, what I was before, wasn't quite as much as I thought it was. Which, in other words, that humility kicks in, and suddenly you kind of have a bit of a down, because now it's like, well, the awful truth kicks in a little bit, which says, you know what, I was actually kind of a bit of a knucklehead. And, well, you know what, Ryan, we're always going to be knuckleheads. We just got to make peace with that. Yes, you had that profound contrast because it was so much coming so quickly. So it produced that counter reaction for balance. But also it was a time for the fact that you weren't interacting. It's not so much necessarily that it was all negative. It was also positive, because it gave you time to integrate all that stuff and to build it into the body, to let it absorb, to let it assimilate, right? So there's a lot of positive going on, because that's what you did. All that time, you weren't like saying, I don't want anything to do with this. You were thinking about it. You were letting it settle in and filter, right? But at the same token, also, you were basically getting rid of, you know, the old nonsense, you know, which was still a little bit of it there, right?
Yeah, it's almost like I had to get rid of that old to make room for this new stuff.
Exactly.
And my mind was like comparing that new
exactly
stuff with the old stuff. And the old stuff was like, I don't look so good to that new stuff.
So it's just all nincompooperi,
right?
And you know that. But it's, you made peace with your nincompooperi, and it's now you have that. You must say, well, yeah, I'm a nincompoop, so bloody what? You know what I mean?
And it's okay.
As a nincompoop, it allows me to wear cool hats.
Right.
I just tease you, man. I love your hat. I just tease you, but yeah,
I like it.
Oh, it's fabulous. It's fabulous. It's fabulous. But again, you know, one has to have peace with yourself. You have to have peace with yourself to be able to do stuff like that. If you don't, you're just going to look like a jackass in that hat, right? Or anybody. If you're not comfortable with yourself, you cannot wear something like that. You know, or have a ridiculous beard or whatever the case may be.
Well, it's like they say, I wear the hat doesn't wear me.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
I make the hat look cool.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But it's being at peace with our nincompoopery, because anybody who's got any self-importance and any kind of ego, they can't do things which are other than usual. They can only hide in the familiar and the conventional and the constrained, and that's just sad, you know.
Well, because you're trying to just copy or be somebody you're not. You know what I mean? You're trying to like mimic. You're just mimicking.
Exactly. You're being false, in other words, because you're living somebody else's life, which is a hollow life. Now, you can be utterly real being conventional. I know people like that. They are like the exact exemplification of the average. And they are incredibly happy, and they are fulfilled. And that's their life. Being precisely that. That's real for them. So it's not that everybody has to be different. Hell no. You can be just... but you have to be real about it. You know, they do, and they like being conventional. They like doing things that are traditional and the usual and familiar. They love it. That is real to them, gives them power, and they live with power because of that. So, you know, there are many ways to be real. It's your realness that's important, not somebody else's. Whatever it is for you, whether it's weird or non-weird, doesn't matter. It's your realness that matters.
And for me, and the reason why I like to dress, you know, with flair and fantabulous and all that is I just, you know, we went over that thing last night. My special day, you know, where I learned like that's just who I am. That's not necessarily who everybody else is, but that's my gift.
Yes, 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 yes. You have a predilection for it, and you have a skill for it, and like I said, you have a flair for it. It works for you. That's it. You got to celebrate what works for you and enjoy it. You know.
I don't feel good when I'm just like, looking conventional or normal. I'm not comfortable, I guess.
Exactly. So it's finding your particular comfort point, which is phenomenal. It's really profound. And that's really, I mean, that's something that you've shared that too, that you've expressed, and not just you, but in the course, it's not about we sharing in the course what we do, and what specifically from the course side, what we bring to things. It's we connecting to what is real according to you. It's not like we saying, hey, Ryan, you know what? Here's how to be real. We simply help you uncover what is real inside you. In other words, we make your obvious to you. Because as we like to say, the obvious is not obvious until it's obvious. And that's really what we bring is we're not looking to, put something on you, some beliefs. We're helping you uncover your own realness. That's really, to me, what you also have expressed, right? I'm doing a takeaway on your previous takeaways. What you've expressed is the value in that you're getting to connect to your own real self, not somebody else's stuff, right? We're just bringing that out of you.
Yeah. And really, like we were talking, it's not about like, it is about what you do, but it's about who you are, and who you are becoming will show itself in your actions and what you do.
Yes.
So you're becoming something different, and then your actions will show that difference.
They will reflect it. Exactly. Exactly. Because we can only, right, exactly. We can
who
only,
you are. No.
Yes. We can only live ourselves. And if we're going to be real and we want that to reflect in our actions and our being, we can only be real. When we don't have that connectivity to our actions and things don't work right, it's because we live in somebody else's life.
You're not really living if
exactly.
you don't know who you are.
I want to make a really cool point here, Ryan. You brought out, you sharing the value and the power of things like impeccability and appropriateness. Now, you said those weren't words that you used specifically. You still were aware of them more or less, right? And when we started to, more or less, right? I mean, you knew what inappropriate was. You got into trouble plenty of times for being inappropriate, didn't you?
But I never heard the word. The word.
Right. But the concept, you understood the concept. Right, exactly. And this is what I wanted to mention. When we first started talking about impeccability, you said, you know what? You were like, wow, but that's what I've been doing. But you like saying what I'm thinking. When I explained what impeccability means, you were saying I'm articulating your inner thoughts. You were like, oh, what are you saying? What I've been thinking or what I thought before? Now, okay, that happens to be something that I have a bit of a skill in, and is that articulation? Cool. But the point I want to make is that impeccability as a concept, as a word, may have been relatively new, but as a concept was not. Because then you started to tell me how, yes, you've been trying to live impeccably most of your life. It didn't quite always go quite the way you thought because of other stuff. But nonetheless, in your heart, you were always trying to be impeccable. Yes, you went on some misguided paths and, it was a cock up, but you learned. And even in your learning and even in the screw ups and all the stuff that happened to you, all that magic, you were still nonetheless always trying to be impeccable, because that is just who we are. All people that are good people who are trying to be good are in their own way trying to be impeccable and appropriate. Now, we touched on that as a big point, right? And it's a point that you added to your dictionary of power, was inappropriate application of goodness. We can get into trouble through trying to be good, but in inappropriate ways, in cockeyed ways, in foolish ways, by living according to should and all sorts of crap. So that's what you mentioned to me. But I want to make the point that you didn't necessarily come to connect to impeccability because it was something new. Yes, the word maybe, but the concept, no, that was always there in you, always, right? Just as I believe it's pretty much in everybody. It just has to get brought out and connected to, right?
As my awareness grows, right, of who I am, when I'm learning more and more who I am every day, right? And that awareness keeps growing. It keeps revealing to me that underneath all the junk, right, I've been perfect the whole time.
Right, exactly. And perfect's a very strong word, but I know how you mean it.
Well,
yeah. Impeccable, exactly. Right. It's slightly different, but yeah. Fair enough.
Right. I've been impeccable all along.
Why?
I just wasn't aware of it.
Exactly.
See? So I'm just becoming aware of who I am. That's it.
Right. I'm just, being very cautious with the word perfect because it's a sensitive word and people you connect to it and hear it differently. How you mean it is not quite how a lot of people understand it. So
I guess here's what I mean. I'll separate. I'll say we have two different parts of ourselves. We have like a false self and a real self. So when I say I have been perfect all along, I can say, instead of I'll say my real self has been, I'm realizing who I really am has been perfect.
Right. Exactly.
The false self, who I thought I is imperfect.
Yes, exactly.
But that doesn't mean it's evil or wrong or bad, though.
No. And just to elaborate that on a little bit, because perfect is such a sensitive word, I want to make the point that perfect is conditional. Like in golf, for instance, you always make at least one perfect stroke per hole, and that's when you put the ball in the cup. It doesn't matter whether it twirled around. If it falls to the bottom of the cup, that's a perfect stroke. Doesn't matter because that's the objective. So perfect is conditional. It's relative to context. There's not this absolute standard for perfection, right? So it works for what it is. And in that sense, it's perfect. It's like same thing. I'm thirsty. I drink water. Well, I'm not thirsty anymore. Well, it was perfect for reducing my thirst. It might not have been perfect for making me happy, or it may have been shitty tasting water, but nonetheless, it still reduced my thirst, was perfect for that. So it's always conditional. So we have to understand perfection. And that's how you mean it also, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Well, and I guess I could say it a better way. I'm realizing that I was just a little bit out of balance, maybe even.
Yes, exactly. You were. Exactly.
Because the ego is not bad or evil. And your real self isn't. They are what they are. So maybe I was just more playing out the role of the ego side, which could be the shadow self or the dark side of yourself.
Inappropriate self, unaware self, really.
Right,
that's bottom line. Unaware self, right, exactly.
But then once you come into the light, you're just realizing you were too far, maybe in the dark.
Of awareness, exactly.
Right.
Unawareness, right. Exactly.
And now you're bringing yourself back into balance.
Yes.
What we said, you just want to, you don't want to get rid of that side of yourself, that dark side. You just want to balance out so that you have control.
Yeah, exactly. Awareness of it, exactly.
You have awareness of it.
Right.
It doesn't go away.
No.
It's still part of who you are.
Right.
You're just aware of it so you can,
You're aware of it because why? Because in the totality of the universe, at some point in time in your life, potentially that dark side may be needed, right?
Right.
So the self doesn't throw anything away because everything has the potential and the possibility to be appropriate at some point in time and therefore useful and valuable. So we can't ever throw things away. The point is we want to be aware of that dark side. Why? So that we can use it appropriately and also so that that dark side doesn't use us.
Right. Exactly.
That's very important. Exactly. That's very, very, very important. Brilliant. Hey, hi, Joseph. I haven't been saying hi to the people as they joined because my chat's been a little bit delayed, But man, glad to see you join, Joseph. That's pretty awesome. Joseph made such a fabulous comment, and it led to a big, long discussion. It was just fantastic. I just want to take the moment to thank Joseph for his comment. It's just about spirit and how we see spirit. And, we talk about spirit a lot because it's a big part of the course. Being a spirit warrior and connecting to spirit and refining it, all that. And it's exactly what you're saying. We have that deep self, which, it's our connection to spirit, or even our own spirit, or even spirit itself. We are part of it. It's this connectivity. And it was such a big discussion, and it comes into what you're saying, that there's a part of us that, yes, it has that perfection within its own context, that sensibility, that sobriety, that appropriateness, to use a term that's more open than perfect, but that awesomeness, right, or excellence, yeah.
Or even out, like, I'm realizing that I've been complete, that I am complete, or I'm whole. I guess we could say that. Maybe not perfect.
Yes.
I'm complete or whole. I wasn't lacking anything, but when
right.
I was unaware, I felt like I was lacking, or
right.
I didn't have everything I needed.
Right. As Randall said, I'm paraphrasing his quote, but he said, as a takeaway on what we've been doing in the course, he said, I am enough, but I also want to be more. Or right. I'm enough, I'm also more. So we can be complete, and we can be whole, right? And be satisfied with that. But that doesn't mean that we don't want more, or we don't connect to more. We're just happy with what we have, knowing that I'm enough, I'm whole, and there's always more. Well, that's an awesome awareness to me. Just like, I'm enough, and there's more, right?
Well, yeah, basically what was kind of sad for me, but then I got over it, was the fact that I've just become aware of who I am.
Yeah.
And so I realized that that's the starting point. Like, everything else prior, I wasn't even aware of the real person in me, if that makes sense. Like,
it makes very much sense. Absolutely.
So that's like the starting point. Like, you said, we want to become more.
Yes.
Well, we're like I've thought before, we're like little babies. Not even we're not even babies that have been born.
Yeah, kind of, right.
Our spirit is like a little tiny bit of light or something, inside our body, and it's like a little spark. It's like a seed. We're like a seed. Yeah. We're not even a baby yet. We're like the egg in a mother's womb.
Right, exactly.
We're like that, and basically, the sperm just met the egg, and like that little spark of light went off in my brain. Like,
exactly.
That's what happened. Like, I was just planted in the womb.
Right. And then and we realized that who we had been before, wasn't really a real self. And we suddenly discover, oh my goodness, you know what? I have a real self. And you know what? My real self is okay. It's fine. And my real self is a self which likes to learn. It's a self which likes to grow. It likes to expand. Right. Where my real self loves awareness, loves being more aware, loves moreness. And that's the profound shift. And that's exactly what you said, what you're articulating, what you're expressing, Ryan. It's exactly what the course is all about. It's precisely to do that, to connect you to your real self and to that new process, in other words, and to give you the tools to be that real self, right?
In your real self, now you got to go through the process of, you got to develop eyes so you can see different, ears so you can hear different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. All the different tools.
You're becoming a new being.
Exactly. Ryan, Bina asked if we could please repeat what you were saying about the dark self or the unaware self. Just to say that again, just to explain a bit about it. She didn't quite hear it all. So.
The dark self, it's not bad, or we can't think of our dark side as evil or bad. You know, how we think of evil or bad.
Right,
because
right, exactly.
We want to think we're good, which, you know, we're not really good, but we're not bad either. Like, we're everything.
Exactly. Right there. That's the key point.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We like to judge, though, and say, well, that's bad or that's good, when it's all like neutral. So
it's all about appropriateness, right?
It's all about appropriateness, right? So, you know, a lot of people who were raised in religion, no matter what the religion is, we've been programmed to judge everything, especially, you know, we're taught to believe that we're good and everybody else is bad. And if
superior,
right? And then you got to judge, and this is bad, this is bad. You know what I'm saying? But I realize your shadow side is not evil and it's not bad, and you have to like reprogram your mind to believe that it's perfect too, just like your good side.
It depends on the appropriateness.
Exactly. It comes back to being appropriate.
Exactly.
You can't get rid of that dark side. You're always, here's the interesting thing. And Bina, she was raised in a religion kind of like, you know, like me, to where we believe there's like a heaven and a hell. You're going to one place or the other. If you do good stuff, you go to heaven. If you do bad stuff, you go to hell. Well, it's hard for people like us. We're so programmed, you know, that way that it's hard for us to accept that shadow side of ourselves. We think we need to eradicate it and get rid of it and like destroy it. But that's what I've realized is God, if we can call it that, or the universe, love, right?
Life.
Love is in everything. Like what we would think of as hell, love is there. If we want to think of heaven, love is there. So it's all encompassing. You can't get rid of heaven and hell will always be. And we want to live in both places at the same time. See, that's a hard concept for people to understand because we want to go to one or the other. We want to split and separate ourselves, right? But what I'm learning is we want to live in both.
We want to have awareness of both, full awareness, so that we can use either as appropriate. Would that be a nice takeaway?
Yeah, that
put it in your notes, please, Ryan.
or we might even want to live like we want to be in the middle of it all. Maybe we want to be like right here,
or whatever's appropriate. We just want to be aware of it all. We want to be aware of both our light side and our dark side, so that we can use them as appropriate.
Yeah, exactly.
That's powerful. That's powerful, Ryan. That's huge. You know, I'm just letting that settle in. And just to repeat it again, you know, being aware. Now when we say our dark side, well, it's just a way of doing things. It's a style. Sometimes that dark side is appropriate. It's necessary. Sometimes, okay.
Sometimes you got to be mean and nasty, man.
If it has to be, it's all about appropriateness. So if it's appropriate, it's good. However, it might not be our style and preference. And in general, we prefer the light side, and that's where we hang out, you know. But again, we need to have the tools available, awareness to say, hey, you know what? That's a side that has its uses and it can be necessary, and we can't deny it, because if we deny it, we deny ourselves the opportunity and the ability to use it when needed, right?
I'll say it could be inappropriate when the dark side or the light is used when it thinks it's being used as appropriate, but it's really being used, but it's really inappropriate. So the light and dark can be used inappropriately.
Exactly. Exactly. And to segue here, Joseph makes a really nice comment there that it ties in exactly with what we're saying, and we can, you know, discuss that because it's completely connected. Spiritual principles, Joseph says, spiritual principles would make good topics for specific discussion. Yes, they do. They are awesome. We love them. Like judging. Judge not lest you be judged, but don't we need to judge sometimes? Right? So
well, that's what I'm saying.
Exactly what you're saying. It's perfect. Exactly.
Because basically, until you become aware, here's the thing, until you become aware of that shadow side, I don't think you can judge those things appropriately, because you're not, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know what you're looking at.
Right.
You know, like, let's say you're trying to judge somebody and you think what they're doing is wrong or whatever, evil. Right. Unless you're aware of that same thing inside of yourself, you can't judge that action appropriately.
Right. And when
saying so,
right. And when is judging appropriate? I like to be judged. I want self-awareness. Please judge me. I love it. Bring it on. Bring it on. For me,
I'm saying judgment is appropriate when, like, you can judge appropriate when you've realized those same things within you. So let's say this, for instance, I'll give an example. So let's say, impatience, okay? Like me, when I became aware of how that I was impatient, right? And all the different ways that I could see all the different ways I was being impatient. Well, now, because I've realized I am impatient, I see that in myself, and I've become humbled in that area, that specific area. Now that gives me the license or the right, because I've become righteous in that area. Now I can be right, and I can judge rightly. I can judge righteously in that area. I'm not saying in all things.
Right.
Like, we want to be able to judge that way in all things.
Right.
Until you've become aware of that specific thing within yourself, you can't judge it rightly in somebody else's. You can't see it clearly.
Right. Because
now that you see it clearly in you, you can see it clearly in another, because you are the other, and the other is you.
That's the point. That is the key point that ties it together.
Right.
When we understand, I'm just doing the takeaway on what you're saying again.
Right.
When we understand that everyone is also us, that we are merely different reflections of the totality, and that, there but for the grace of God go I, so others are a different variation of awareness, a different path, and they could just as well be you. And the magic of others is to say, you know what, that's what I need to learn from. That's a good way to be. That's a way I don't want to be. I can learn from this. That's a different way of being. Even if it's good or bad, doesn't matter. It's just whenever I see a different way of being, oh, that's a possibility. Okay. I add that to myself. So in judging, I'm really determining effectiveness, efficiency, appropriateness, sensibility. Now, I'm not saying you're good or bad. I don't care about that. I'm looking at it from that point of the overall and the sensibility of it, and I'm learning from it. So through judging appropriately, I'm learning really to see whether it's good for me or not, right? And I'm incorporating your difference into me, and I'm utilizing it and celebrating it at the same time. So yes, so judging is just, when it's negative, it's people looking to be superior, and they're doing the whole hierarchy thing and all that crap. But when you haven't got any part of that now in it, and you're saying, like Joseph was saying, isn't there a time for appropriate judgment? Of course there is. There absolutely is. Because when we do that, we are being discerning. That's what, when you go to a judge in a court, you want them to be discerning, right? If they're not discerning, then they're going to make poor judgments. So judging as appropriate activity, it's about the application of discernment, right?
And righteous judgment involves honesty.
Exactly. With yourself.
You have to be honest with yourself
Exactly.
before you can.
Exactly. And Mary brings up a really powerful point here. Without knowing someone's circumstances, I prefer not to judge others because I would not want
because
to
you
judge
don't
myself.
know, you're not aware.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the power of judgment.
Judge. Right.
Exactly. That's the power, because now you're saying, hey, in order to be discerning, I have to be aware, which is, gets us back to that ADU, awareness, discernment, and understanding. So yes, exactly. But through the application of judgment, you say, well, you know what? I want to figure out what's going on here. So I have to be aware.
You can do that.
Right. Exactly.
I say, if you can't judge a book by its cover, but if you took the time to become aware of the person's situation and they were open to the whole thing, then you could help them you could guide them into judging that for themselves, basically. You're not even like doing the judging. You're just like, okay, well, let me help you become aware of what's going on.
The entire issue of judging, judgmental, all of that, it all disappears when, first of all, you add appropriateness to the whole deal. And then you add, and in order to be appropriateness, you have to add awareness. So when you add appropriateness and awareness, and you then add the third A, which is why we like that whole A plus for that, which is attunement. When you get in attunement with this situation, as Mary says, you can't judge if you don't know what's going on. And really, at bottom line, we can speculate about judgment, but we can never absolutely insist on our judgments, because we can never truly know what's going on inside another. We can assume, we can guess, we can speculate, all that, but we can't truly know. So judgment says, hey, you know what? We can do this for belief not required in a different kind of an application, in a sense that we're just speculating, and we know we're speculating. We're not saying this is a hard and fast. We just practicing our awareness application. We're practicing discernment. We're guessing, really. And we're doing this knowingly. So we can use judging and judgment in that sense, because it's more serious. And we're taking things a little bit more deliberately to say, you know what? Hey, I'm practicing my discernment by being judged, judging in a sense, because I'm really looking to learn. And by in reverse, I want to have that same sober, serious, earnest perspective applied to me. It's like, hey, man, bring it on with the judging. I want it. I want to be judged, because I want to know where I can improve. I want to know where I can learn. I want to know where I'm like not being effective and efficient and sensible and sober and all that. So, yeah, so it goes both ways. So,
and I think that's really big, because I think a lot of the religions, they judge, and they might even judge rightly, but they do it inappropriately.
Exactly, because that judgment's about
huge.
Right, it's about hierarchy and superiority and ego and just bullshit.
But if you're appropriate,
exactly,
with your judgment, that other part of you, or that other person like you or whoever else who's hearing it, they'll listen to it.
Exactly.
Because it's appropriate. They know it's right.
Right, exactly. And here's the point, though, and why judge, the word judge, and I don't generally like to use the word, and I'm only bringing it up because
dirty word, right?
It is. Exactly. It's a corrupted word and a corrupted concept. We're just saying that if we expand our awareness on it, we can use it in a sensible way. But Joseph brings up the point. He says, "But there's the whole seeing each for their suchness, to see what is without our hidden preconceptions." Precisely.
Right.
And Joseph's articulating exactly what we're going about. We are actually using judging in a counterintuitive way to precisely overcome those or Zen walking, practicing non-judgment. We are using judgment to actually practice non-judgment, to be discerning, really. So we're actually using it to leverage ourselves, to not be crappy judgmental, but to be sensible, which is to be discerning, to be aware, to be understanding, to not have preconceptions. Exactly.
We have to understand that instead of thinking of judging as saying somebody is wrong, we need to think of judging.
We can. We don't have to. We can.
Well, yeah, we can think of, because we can. When you're judging righteously, what's interesting is you never end up telling someone that they're wrong about something. Like it's, what I mean? You almost have to use a different word, like judge.
Exactly. Well, the way you're using it, Ryan, you actually, what you are doing, it's got nothing to do with the other person. It's all about
No,
you and
it's all about
yourself. It's all about me, really. It's a
exactly.
mechanism of self-awareness. I'm looking at somebody else as if they were me, and I'm saying, how would this apply to me?
Because I am loving that part of myself, whoever that person is. Let's say they did something and I'm like, oh, I didn't like what they did. But if I change my perspective and I say, you know what? I do like it, you know. It doesn't matter what they did. I like them. Now, since I'm loving that part of myself.
Why? You're making peace with your darkness, your dark side, in other words.
Right.
Which is what, part of the course is such a big deal. That's celebration of difference. When we get to that point, we transcend the old judgments and we say, now I've shifted. Yes, we're using this ugly word judgment, but we've shifted our discernment to through leveraging judgment and making peace with it and sorting it all out. And then we can say, now I can throw judgment out the window and I can get to discernment, which leads me to see difference as this magical, marvelous, wonderful thingness, and I can celebrate the difference.
Do you think
that's where we want to be at? Yeah. I'm going to come to your comment in a second, Rachel.
Yeah. I got to be careful myself. In the past, I've had, let's say, a big mouth where,
right. Yeah.
Where I could say things to get myself in trouble because, and I'm still not where I need to be. I'm still, growing and learning. So I still have egos that are intact that are too big, whatever. I'm trying, I'm thinking about things and I'm like, I don't know if I should say that. I don't know if I should say that because it might not be appropriate. So
yeah, it's all good, man. All good, no worries. I want to read Rachel's comment. She makes a nice little takeaway. She says, "She who blames everyone has far to journey. She who blames herself is halfway there. She who blames no one has arrived." And to this, Joseph replies, "Rachel, so we can't blame Hitler." And he brings up a profound point that it all depends. From our takeaway, we discussed this somewhat, from the course point of view.
What I think.
Right. I was just going to, because, Hitler's so sensitive. I want to just be cautious here and be a little bit diplomatic.
It's okay.
Right. Well, the thing is that what Rachel says is true. When we've overcome the need to blame, it doesn't mean we can't assign blame as appropriate, as sensible. And that's a whole different thing. The need to blame, very different. So, of course, I can blame Hitler. At the same token, I can also understand Hitler was acting out of profound, deep, gross ignorance, unawareness, foolishness, idiocy, all of that. At root, his evil comes from unawareness. What he thought in his own cocked up, messed up, crazy brain was that in his mind, he thought he's some way doing what's good and right. Yeah, he's all messed up, completely messed up. And I can still blame him for that because why do I blame him for it? Because there was a part of him that did know some of the shit that he was doing was wrong. Right. And through his actions that was revealed. So, yes, if you're doing stuff that you know and you feel to be wrong, then you have to blame. But now, and if you're hurting others, well, same thing, so.
But they'll receive their own judgment, right? For that.
Exactly.
We don't have to be the ones to punish them. You know what I mean? It's not our position to punish another person for their wrong deeds.
Right.
Because I'll take this back to the Bible because I grew up with it.
Go ahead, man. No worries. We all share what we know. No problem.
Right. This is, what I think of when we're thinking of this. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Yeah. So do not repay evil with evil.
Right. Now, how do you feel about that particular verse, Ryan? In your words, how do you think about it?
I mean, I don't know if I can say it any better. It's said so well. It's
well,
that's what I'm saying.
Well, so then it's you say that vengeance is the Lord's. You believe that. That's you feel that's right.
Basically, the ego. Let's put it this way. Let's put it in modern terms. the ego wants to have vengeance and repay. So if somebody hurts you, you're like, oh, I'm hurt. That's your ego, right? Your ego gets offended and like, oh man, I got my feelings hurt. That's all your ego. And I don't care what you say, because your real self cannot be offended.
Right.
You see, and that's what we need. The real self cannot be offended.
No.
Because it's all powerful, right? And you just can't offend something that's all powerful. But anyways, I'll just say, you shouldn't repay evil with evil. So like the topic of Hitler, this is a tough thing to talk about, but I specialize in that kind of stuff. I have a gift to talk about hard things, but put them in a nice way, maybe. So Hitler, if we say what he did is wrong, okay, or he was unaware for what he did, right?
Yeah.
But if we are doing what we're supposed to do, we have to say, but it's not my place to call him evil because he is me.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So do we accept that level of darkness within ourselves? See that? And now we got to get to this. Is the audience we're speaking to, like you and these other people listening to me talk, are you guys ready to accept that level of darkness within yourself? You might not be. You might not be. Because I've already went there. I've already accepted that I am Hitler and Hitler is me. This is what's interesting, and you got to take
profound. That's a big deal.
You got to take this. You said you got to take things all the way to the end. So if you take it all the way to the end, you want to go into the dark, you'll find out that within you and within everyone is darkness so profound that you have committed every heinous thing you can think of. Now, I'll tell you this, and I know it's true. You have done what Hitler's done. You have done what all the abortion doctors have done. You have done whatever you think is the most heinous thing. You've raped, you've murdered, you've killed, everything. I'm telling you, you yourself have done all of these things. And until you can be aware of the total depravity of your own self, you're not ready.
Yeah. No. Right. Because let me do a takeaway of what you're saying here, Ryan. So
and it's hard shit. It's hard shit.
Okay? Right. So to put it in context, what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're going to that over-end perspective of, when we the overallness of life, we are looking to be one with spirit, one with the universe, one with God, one with consciousness. However that's defined, we are looking to be the universe. In other words, we are looking to be the all, right? And that's a commonality with all of the spiritual traditions or religions and many philosophies as well, right? So it's just maximum awareness. So in other words, what you are saying, if we are going to get to the end point that life is putting us on, the path of life is the path of developing and enhancing awareness, growing awareness. The end point, which is total awareness, that end point has to incorporate the awareness of all of this evil shit that you talk about. And you have to be able to deal with the fact that as total awareness, you have that capability for everything. Why? Why is that so critical? Why? That's very important. Because in order for awareness to grow, for awareness to develop, in order for awareness to be real, it has to do so of itself. Which means if you are not legitimately capable of making mistakes, of doing something really profoundly evil, then that means that your awareness choices are not real, right? And therefore your awareness is not real. So we have to have that capability and possibility. Plus, as we are developing all these different parts of the universe, if we take time and we kind of reverse it, because when we get to that point of total awareness, there will be no time. Everything will be happening instantaneously. We also have to understand that in order for us to get to total awareness, we have to traverse each and every little path, like in my little image behind me here. We have to expand into each path to see if they have validity, to see if they're worthwhile. So Hitler was a total dead-end path. It might have seemed good, and we have to learn from that. In the beginning, he thought he's doing something cool and wonderful. He's on his own superiority kick and all this nonsense. So we have to understand that those paths have to be, because we have to see their worthlessness, their crappiness, and their dead-endness, and how they are not worthwhile. So there's a profound point in accepting all of that shit as being in some variation of yourself, because really that's what it is. We look at everybody, everything, not just everybody, every insect, every animal, all of them are some variation and potential variation of ourselves on this path to total awareness. Yeah.
Now I guess we can still righteously judge Hitler's situation and say, because I'm aware now of what actions people take when they are unaware, I can say, well, because of his actions, because your actions speak of who you actually are.
Right.
Well, because of that person's actions, I know they're not aware.
Right.
Because I become aware, and so I know that you act differently.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Right. In other words, Hitler becomes a tool for the enhancement and development of our own awareness.
Exactly.
Right. Yep. And as such, all that becomes a profound part of the overall magic of the universe.
You're just judging to see where you're at on, where you're at in the whole universe. Like, am I here? Am I here? Am I here? Because everybody wants to know, well, where am I at on the level? Am I at the beginning? Am I in the middle? Am I at this level?
Right.
And it's not about being superior. It's just, it's for you. It's for you. It's like, well, because I'm aware, I can see they're doing these actions. Okay, so they're here. I used to be here, and now I'm here. But
it's all relative anyway, right? Because the path of awareness is really a path of infinity, and there's always more. So where you are, it's relative to infinity, is always an infinitely small perspective.
It's for you.
Exactly. So there's always going to be more, and you're always relatively going to be nothing. So that's it. And yes, Joseph says good evil duality, and he's saying I lean towards what Rachel said, which most often what we call evil is a form of pathology. Yes, exactly. And we're sharing that exact same perspective. Mm-hmm. Oh, excuse me. From what we are saying, evil is nothing but unawareness, which is a pathology. Same thing. It's a distortion. Right. That's really
distortion.
It's a distortion. It's a pathology. It's an unawareness. It's ignorance. But at root, it's always unawareness. That's really the bottom line of evil. Because you can say, yes, evil is negative intent, but that negative intent is still founded on what that individual thinks they should be doing, and should always has it in that implication that there's a rightness to it, which it's contextual. It's unaware. They're not realizing how what they are doing has negative consequences. And negativity always has negativity for the self, and so on and so forth. So always it's just unawareness, right? Exactly. So evil is this grand pathology. Yes, I agree. That's just awesome, Joseph. That's a very nice way of relating to it, and a profoundly excellent understanding, and a nice takeaway of what Rachel said. That's really awesome.
When you become aware, though, of all this stuff within yourself, you understand that the way that you became aware of it was through accepting love and forgiveness for yourself. Right. And now you understand that the only way that the other parts of yourself that are unaware, the only way that they can come to that awareness is through love and grace and forgiveness, all these concepts. So now you understand that what you viewed as once your enemy or something that was evil, well, the only way for them to become aware is you have to love them. You see, so you can't. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, I hear you. I hear you. What you bring up in me, if I do want a come up takeaway, it's that awareness is like the light of the sun. right? And it shines on everything regardless. So you know, I love weeds, so weeds aren't bad, but everything grows from the sun. And whatever they do with the sunlight, that's up to them. But the sunlight in itself is inherently positive, right? Sunlight in itself is inherently positive. What we do with that sunlight, that's a whole different deal. But sunlight, which is, if you think of sunlight as awareness, man, you know, what you do with that sunlight, that's it. It's up to you. But yeah, sunlight as awareness, when you think of it that way, it's profound. And now let's go a little bit step further, because we like to go to always go to that next level, right? And take things further. Okay, hey, what happens if I'm the sun, right? For me to learn to be like the sun, which means that I need to be comfortable shining my awareness indiscriminately, freely, right? The sun gives its light freely. The same thing, I want to give my awareness freely. And to bring back to our judgment thing, that, hey, it's free. You take it whichever way you want to do with it. I'm just sharing my awareness. What you do with it, that's up to you. But my awareness is inherently positive. End of story.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And when we share it in that way, we then make it inherently positive, because that's our intent. And we're sharing sunlight as this free, inherent positivity, right? And positivity here, we mean, just to, in case Shisa's watching, because she mentioned it, she brought up a good point. Positivity, we mean an expectation of something beneficial. Not cheerfulness and false cheer and bullshit and all that. That's not positivity. That's just ego, bullshit, nonsense. That's falsity. That's crap. That's not positivity, right? So sobriety, the original meaning, like we put in our power dictionary, capital S, sobriety, that is profoundly positive, is it not? Seriousness, fantastically positive. Patience, fantastically positive. Nothing cheerful about patience sometimes. It can be, but doesn't necessarily so. Same with sobriety, same with sincerity, same with seriousness. All of these are profoundly powerful and profoundly positive, same as impeccability. But they don't have to involve cheerfulness and false, false happiness, all this nonsense, pretension, all that. None of it has to be in there. So yeah, positivity in the context of awareness being positive, that it has an expectation and a consequence that's beneficial, right? Joseph is saying something interesting. He says, one sec, Ryan. Can you hold on to that or not? I just want to follow on, because his point is still about the pathology. Oh, okay. Interesting point is each stage of growth, there is a pathology. For each stage of growth, the pathology looks different. But it is something we have to judge wherever we are, because it is always ready to grow. We must always be on our toes. What a fabulous takeaway, Joseph. Oh, I love it, man. Isn't that something? Ryan, what Joseph was saying there, he's saying that for each stage of growth, there's a pathology. And for each growth, the pathology looks different. In other words, that what you were saying, because our theme here, our column still, it's Bina's question, right? To bring it all back and tie it in. Bina wanted an articulation and a recap of the dark side and the unaware self and how that makes sense. So we are saying here, to bring it all back and to connect it to what Joseph's saying, we're saying that yes, for each stage of growth, there's a pathology or a dark side. And for each stage of growth, that dark side is slightly different. And we have to have the ability to be discerning or judgmental or judging of what that pathology is or that dark side, so that we can integrate it appropriately, so we can be aware of it and not have it become distorted and cockeyed and all of that. So that's what Joseph's saying. We must always be on our toes. In other words, another way of saying always being on your toes is to always be aware and always to pay attention and to be in attunement. That's a nice little golden triangle right there. Awareness, attunement, and attention. They go together. Right. So being on our toes, it's also being strategic, right? Always having strategy in mind. Anticipation, another A term, right?
Yeah, it's a discipline for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a daily, like he just said. I mean, he said it perfect.
Right. It's a what you're saying in terms of because we're on our that column of the dark side. Yes, that's a sub theme, But our overall theme of the chat is your takeaways of what you celebrating, of what you've gotten value from the course, right?
Yep.
And in that sense, what you are saying, all of this, being on your toes, being impeccable, being strategic, being aware, paying attention, all the things we deal with in the course, that changes your way of living to make it a deliberate way of living, right?
Correct.
And that's being on your toes always. It's developing that deliberate way of being. That's the subheading of a way of impeccability. It's called a deliberate way of being. When we transform to that deliberateness of being, that deliberate way of being, that's when we bring power to bear. And I don't mean power in authority, having a power, and none of that nonsense. Personal power, which is simply power in this context means energy we can deliberately use, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, because we can have lots of energy, but it doesn't help us anything if we can't make use of it.
Yeah.
When we can make use of it, then it becomes power. So yes, Bina, it is amazing. You're absolutely right. When we start to connect everything, it all is amazing. And let me show the little full diagram, the image here behind me. That's why I like this, because you see, everything we discuss judgment, we discuss dark side, we discussed gifts, all the points that we discussed, they're all each like those little squares, right? And they all end up going to that center point in the middle there, where they all start to get together. They all start to become this profound awareness, this profound understanding, this profound discernment, this profound attunement. And at that point, they all mean the same thing. All of those terms, really, right? When we take awareness and appropriateness, attention, strategy, all of these things, when we really get to them in the fullness, they all mean the same thing, don't they?
Right.
They really do in the end. When you're fully aware, you're fully appropriate. When you're fully appropriate, you're fully in attunement. Where you're fully strategic when you're totally aware. So exactly. But we're going beyond self-empowerment. We're going to the like kind of a next level. But yes, totally, Rachel. It is precisely all about self-empowerment. All spiritual traditions, all philosophical traditions, all religious traditions, no matter, even if they may have cockeyed ways of getting there, anything, any cultural tradition even, they're all about ultimately self-empowerment, which is really, truly self-appropriateness. So yeah, definitely all about because if you're not empowered, that means you're not really using yourself and you're not really being real, right? When you're disempowered, that's when you're not real. And the more real you become, the more empowered you become.
Right.
Absolutely. And the more aware you become, the more empowered you become. The more you have the ability to use your awareness. Not just, it's no good just being aware. You have to be able to use that awareness. There has to be application. Why application is such a key term, right? So you have to have that application. I'm sorry, Ryan. Are you getting me on a
I'm gonna raise my hand.
No, sorry, man. Sorry. I'm trying to connect it all, and it's so much, and just put it all together. I just love it. Sorry. So go ahead. Yeah, say.
Before I lose it, I just want to say, and this is a compliment on your part, and you can take it however, but I appreciate, from what I'm seeing what's going on with our whole conversation, I appreciate how you always take everything your students are saying, and you always bring it back to what the course is really about. Because myself, you've already been there, done that, went down those roads.
Right.
Me and Josephina, Rachel, we all are learning. You're teaching us, and we're learning from you. So we can get sidetracked and we can get off on these tangents that may not really be that important. It may be even partially an ego thing.
Right.
We're all saying the same stuff, and we're like, well, blah, 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 just from different perspectives. But I appreciate and I like how you take all that and you're like, okay, everybody.
Bring it back to focus.
Let's just bring it back to what.
And that's why we start the course with focus of purpose and clarity of intent. Right. Because we want to always have that focus of purpose. Because if we don't, then it doesn't matter. Now we can go down those sidetracks and they can mean nothing. Or if we bring it back to our focus of purpose, that sidetrack, that tangent becomes useful and valuable. And since we're all about application, we want to make it useful and we want to transform it into usefulness and value. Yes. And just to a point of correction, just in case for somebody else, Joseph's not doing the course, but thank you for that. You know, I appreciate what you were saying.
Well, I just mean everybody listening right now.
Yeah. Just a point of accuracy, but yeah, no, I just like it. Just my Mr. A coming up.
Mr. A.
Mr. A. He likes to, make sure the details are correct. Like
I got a Mr. A.
Yeah, you gotta manage Mr. A, so I like give him his little bit of space there. It's like, okay, all right, now he doesn't bother me, and now he's kind of okay, now he's at ease again, he can kind of relax. And Mr. A doesn't stand for any of the more wonderful A terms. He stands for anal and arsehole, so so but Mr. A is also profoundly valuable. When we manage and we leverage Mr. A, of course he can be awesome, or she, in either way, it can be Mrs. A too or Miss A. So yeah, it's just awesome, leveraging ourselves. But like you say, to bring it all back to have that constant focus of purpose, that's how we leverage our detours to become useful and valuable. And that's what we always want to do. We want to make sure we get value and usefulness. If there's no value and usefulness, then all this talking means bugger all. And for me, I don't want to waste my energy. What are we about? The way of impeccability. What is impeccability? Using your energy to best effect, right? That's it. So I don't want to be wasting my energy on crap and nonsense. So in other words, I can talk about shit all day, and I love talking about everything. However, I always want to make that effort to bring it back to value and use.
Energy management.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all like
energy management, capital E, capital M, put a hyphen in it because it's a one thing. Put that in your dictionary of power. Yeah.
I like that one.
Energy management. Yeah. It all begins with energy management. There's a nice little conception quote for you. It all begins with energy management. Everything all begins with energy management. We'll get to that later. We'll get to habits and routines and all that. All begins with energy management. It's very powerful. So Joseph is saying off topic, Rachel. Nothing is off topic, Joseph. Nothing. There's no such thing. We can take everything because everything is connected. Again, going back to my image behind me, everything is connected. So it doesn't matter that where we go in a tangent. When we understand how everything is connected, we can find our way to connect it back to where we're at. So Rachel says, off topic, Rachel, but I am pagan too, and intent is such a magical concept. Yes. And please, Joseph, capital I intent. Not that you have to use it, but for us, there's intent without the capital I, and there's intent, the capital I intent. And it's a powerful deal because intent is energy that is focused and directed. And as such, intent is a power. And yes, it is the most magical concept. As far as I'm concerned, me personally, that's what makes the universe and life what it is. It is energy which has become intent. So no matter how you define that and your own personal thing to that, if you say it's God or it's Krishna, it's Buddha, it's Allah, it's spirit, it doesn't matter what you call it. At the bottom, each one of those conceptions of life, you could say even nature has an intent, right? And that is what makes life and everything. So it's connecting to that overall intent. Now, if we want to really take this to the next level, and I'm really expressing this, yes, there's a lot of opinion in it, and I can substantiate it where it becomes self-evident. But if we start to look at what is the intent of life, we really get somewhere and we tie everything together. We get to that center point down there, right? And we say the intent of life is awareness. Developing it, expanding it, enhancing it, getting to that point of maximum awareness. Because if we have that full awareness, what do we get from that? We get complete freedom, don't we? Oh, and it's my pleasure, Mary. The sharing is absolutely my pleasure. My pleasure. Oh, Rachel, just to comment on that, that yes, there's plenty pagans around. When you really start to get into things with people and you start to look at their conceptions of how they look at things. You know, I remember doing this as a kid. I would listen to people and they talk and they didn't know I was there. You know, I'm young and they're just like, oh, kids, they don't hear what you're saying. But I heard them express really private thoughts that they didn't think other people were hearing. And then also I asked people, like, what do you think God means? What does God mean to you? Or what does Allah mean to you? Or what does Buddha mean to you? I asked everybody in all the different faiths and religions. Doesn't matter. And always, when you really get people to express their inner personal opinion, you see how it is so different to everybody else's. But at the same token, you also start to see through all that great range of differences. I like to abstract things. When you put it all together and you abstract what is the similarities, always you see that they are talking about capital I intent. And an intent to goodness, an intent to awareness, which of course an intent to awareness is an intent to goodness, because the two have to go together. And the same thing, an intent to awareness is an intent to love, capital L, maximum all over love. Because how in the hell are you not going to love everything if you have awareness? It's just like duh, it's like obvious. So it all works together. So God is love, God is awareness, God is intent, same thing. See, it all connects together like that. So yeah, so whether you're a pagan or not, it makes no difference. It's just terminology. It makes no difference.
Not required, right?
Exactly. Plus, we can transcend terminology, which is what we're trying to do, right?
We can transcend. What's interesting, and I thought about this before, and you know, I don't think, I'm not pagan, I don't really subscribe to any religion, but I grew up, I'm just letting everybody know, I grew up in a Christian home, so we studied the Bible. So that's just how.
An intensely Christian home. I mean, like you guys were like, the way you grew up was like super.
Radical. We didn't watch TV. You know, women didn't wear makeup. Like it was like pretty intense. It was pretty radical.
Extreme, yeah.
But anyways, what you were saying, we're trying to transcend
terminology.
How'd you word it?
Terminology.
Terminology. Yeah, because we put these negative connotations to words and things like that, which they might not even mean that thing. Like I kind of like wanted to get away from Christianity because I've seen negative connotations with certain things. Because there was a lot of people within that religion. I'm not saying the religion is bad. I'm just saying there's a lot of hypocrisy going on within the religion. Exactly. So everybody got a bad taste in their mouth, you know, with all of that thing. But all that to say, in the Bible, it says that eventually all knowledge will fade, meaning that eventually, as a conscious community, me, you, all of us here, the whole world, all of us souls will get to a point where we won't have use for terminology anymore. We won't even need to really speak like we're speaking now, because we'll have such a knowing that basically we'll be psychic, you know, in a sense, to where we will just, we'll know each other so well, we won't even need to speak to each other. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, exactly. So
now that's a futuristic. That's like
right. But it's a profound concept, and it's one we haven't actually spoken about in the course yet, and we will get there, right? And that's the to add to your power dictionary, the concept of silent knowledge.
Ooh, I like that one. Yep, that's what I was thinking. Right.
I'm just exercising my skill of articulation.
It's good.
You gotta own yourself, you know. So it's all good. And which is right. And silent knowledge is knowing without knowing.
Right.
Very powerful. It's like being aware or believing without believing. You know, trust without trusting. We can know without knowing. So we can have that silent knowledge. We don't have to think specifically. It just comes directly. We can skip the steps of conscious formulation of thought, of using language, of using words, and we can go directly to knowing what is appropriate. But first, we have to train ourselves in all the variations. We first have to have all those tools, and we first have to get everything all ship-shape and put it together. And then, like, it's like, you're building this ladder to climb the wall. When you get to the top, you can throw the ladder away. So it's the same thing. We mustn't mistake the tools for the journey, right? So all the tools of awareness, the tools of language, the tools of everything that we're doing in terms of the course and just general life learning, those are all tools that we are going to then throw away in the end when we get to silent knowledge, right? Then we can transcend those power terms and all that, even though they're phenomenally useful. In the end result, we're going to transcend them, right?
Right.
That's pretty huge. That's pretty huge. Joseph made a couple of nice extra comments here. Intent has its own life. Yes, exactly. Intent absolutely has its own life.
It's like a person. It's like a person.
Right, exactly. And this is the incredible thing with intent, just to make a little sidetrack on intent here. So we've got intent as the universe, life, nature, the world, God, whatever you want to call it, intent in that sense, all caps intent, the big enchilada intent. Yes, it has its own life. Also, when we take our personalized application of intent, it's like, let's think of intent as being this great big river in the universe. When you see those science fiction things, this great, flow of energy in the, that's it. Okay, we're going to like stick our hand in there. We're going to pull out this little splash of intent that we're going to use for ourselves. So when we set an intent into motion, in other words, I'm saying, you know what? I have this intent to consciousness, this intent to awareness, or whatever my intent is. I just like, those are just really good intents, because those ones, you don't have to be worried too much about unintended consequences. So when I set my intent into motion, my intent also has a life of its own, and we have to be aware of that. So when we set an intent into motion, we have to have the patience and the discipline and the forbearance to wait, to give that intent time to work itself out, to change things, to deal with whatever. In other words, when we put an intent into motion, what are we really doing? We are looking to have the entire universe rearrange itself in order to accommodate us. Now, depending on how much that needs to, shift, it takes time. So we have to wait for intent to have that life of intent of its own, for it to implement and to manifest and to come into being. So that's why patience is such an incredible superpower, because it enables us to allow that life of its own of intent to take place and fall into place. So yeah, it's a big deal that intent has a life of its own. Plus, once we put an intent into place, we can't give up on that intent and then suddenly jump to another intent. Because now, if we do, we may have a different intent which cancels out the first intent, and we never get what we want, simply because we're not patient enough, right? So we have these contradicting and conflicting intents, and that's where we get problems in our lives and stuff like that. So it's very profound.
That's the importance of the focus at the beginning.
Exactly. A focus of purpose, precisely. Yeah. Precisely. So that we can have appropriate intent.
Because the rest of it won't work without you being focused.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And it's about having appropriate intent. Because if you're going to go around intending crap, we all know about the people with the wishes. The guy says, oh man, I wish for $1 million. And let me see if I can make a nice knocking sound here. It's not a good one. There we go. He gets a knock on the door. Trying to tell a more dramatic story. Anyway, so he gets a knock on the door, right? He opens the door. Oh, it's the guy from the insurance company. Okay, here's a check for $1 million. Wow, you know what? I just intended it. I just had to switch for $1 million. Wow, fantastic. How did this come about? Well, you know what? Your wife died, and this is your insurance policy. The premium that's paid out. Oh, fuck. So excuse my language, but unintended consequences. So we have to be very careful with intent. They do have a life of their own. And unintended consequences, very powerful when it comes to intent. So we have to be scrupulous about our intents and use them cautiously and sparingly and judiciously and with discernment and awareness and understanding. So we need to have intents which we put into motion, like the intent to awareness. That's an intent that I intend more awareness, and fine. You know what? There's not likely to be any downsides to that. But I can't intend anything else. I have no choice. I have to intend more awareness because I don't want to make intents that have unintended consequences, right?
It reminds me of like any movie or TV show with the genie, and they rub up, the genie pops out, and they grant them like 3 wishes. They make like ends being like nothing like what they really wished for it. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
there's these
exactly.
consequences that come along with
Exactly.
what they wish for.
Exactly. It's always a cock up. You know, they always get this.
Right,
Right. Exactly. It's like a trick question. Those three wishes, always a trick question.
right.
So when
Anyways,
yeah,
I'm just letting you know, I got to be somewhere at
no problem. You know, we were supposed. No problem. We were supposed to do this for 15 minutes only, just about you celebrating. And well, we have been celebrating, you know, what you've been getting out of the course. So yeah, no problem. No worries. But I just wanted to say with the three wishes thing, when I was a smart aleck little kid, you know, and she said, oh, like three wishes. What do you wish for? I said, I only need one. No worries. I'm cool. I just want one. So what if you just want one? Like, so of course I only need one. It's like, I just wish all my wishes come true. Yeah, simple. Life is easy.
There you go. That's a good one.
Yeah. So, you know, I always thought that was just fun, you know, and it fascinated me too, though, because that came to me. I was very little. That's like, you know, I kind of thought things through, and like, but you only really need one wish if you ask for that. And it fascinated me. It absolutely fascinated me how the conventional preconception of the three wishes idea, that you got to pick these three wishes, how that influenced people's wishes. They didn't actually truly think about the whole deal of the wishes, right? So they didn't think it through. Their responses were basically formulaic, right? They were cued, conventional, and they just gave these expected things. They didn't actually truly think about the answer. Because if you think about it, well, isn't that really the actual only answer? So it was a big deal for me, that one little silly little conception. Yes, originally I was like just being a smart ass, you know, but nonetheless, it was a big deal, you know. And when you think of it that way, it's like, man, you know what? We got to really think about stuff. We really got to think about shit. You know, I can't be lazy. Got to think. And like you said earlier, we got to think it through to the end. Because that's what happened with the three wishes. They thought about it, but they didn't think it through to the end. So they only thought, oh, well, I want wealth, I want fame, I want success, I want long life, I want eternity, whatever, you know, immortality. But they didn't think it through to the end. And again, immortality is a fantastic one for that. Okay, so people say, well, okay, you know what? I want to be wealthy, I want to be healthy, and I want immortality. But they didn't say they're going to be happy. So they have wealth and health, but they didn't say happiness. So they have an eternity, a rich, healthy eternity of misery. That's a fuck up.
Right.
So excuse my language, but that's really what it is. So, you know, it's very profound that we have to think things through to the end. Very critical. Very critical. We can get fooled into believing our you know, preliminary thoughts are valuable and cool and that. No, think it through to the end, then you can rest and relax. So yeah, Joseph says, silent knowledge is fed by spiritual practice. Most absolutely, Joseph. That is precisely the way. So from our conception, since we're talking about the way of impeccability and the course, the way of impeccability is precisely that spiritual practice, because yes, it is a practical practice, but as far as we're concerned, spirituality without application is useless. So spirituality, the same way as philosophy, they have to be practical, right, Ryan?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So exactly. Yeah. So
it's nothing. Well, what did you say? It's nothing without practical application.
Exactly. Exactly. I like the way you said it's nothing without practical application. Yeah, your words are cool, man. That's it. It works. It's nothing without practical application. Everything, nothing without application. Exactly. Practical application. We need to get that value and useful practice. So spirituality ultimately is the ultimate practicality, is it not?
Right. Yep.
I mean, if we take like what Joseph's saying, silent knowledge is fed by spiritual practice. Wow, we're going to get a real practical result out of our spiritual practice, which is getting to silent knowledge. That is phenomenally practical, is it not? I mean, that's like ultimate practicality. So to me, real spirituality, actual true spirituality, I really get, is phenomenally practical. It is all about ultimate practicality. Yeah, very profound, very profound, very profound. On that magical note, there's more comments. All right, never mind. I was going to say, man, you know, since we're getting no more comments, Mary says, those intents and actions which become second nature once we are fully aware of our true self. She's expressing her takeaway on what silent knowledge is. Yes, exactly, Mary. Those intents and actions which have become second nature or innate action, not even second nature, automatic nature, once we are fully aware of our true self. Yes, absolutely. Nice takeaway. Nice definition of silent knowledge. Fantastic. And Joseph says, in native culture, we fast and suffer and sit still for silent knowledge, but also believe pilgrimage and walk about to do the same thing. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, Joseph. And that's it's a commonality all around the world. Fasting and well, not always suffering, but fasting, meditation, and pilgrimages and actions. I mean, if you look at like Buddhism, for instance, they have a whole different paths that you get towards enlightenment, towards becoming a Buddha. And one of them is like in your doings. One of them is the path of meditation and paths of prayer. There are all sorts of different paths, doing good works. So yeah, there's lots of, and almost all religions and spiritual traditions have their various practices of how to get to silent knowledge, right? Or to be one with God, or to have eternal consciousness, one consciousness. The terminology, again, when you start to look at what it actually means, you think it through to the end, all say the same thing. It's profound. It's quite magical when we see it all in this thing. So Joseph says a nice thing here too. Intent also shows your stage of growth. Yes, exactly. Intent kind of loops back on itself because don't we, all of us, innately have automatically an intent to goodness? Put that in your power dictionary for me, please, Ryan. Ryan? Intent to goodness, all caps, and with the hyphens, because it's a one thing. And like we have an intent to goodness, right? It's a thing. It's a thing of its own, intent to goodness. And we automatically have that. Here's the point I want to make about intent to goodness, right? It's that we have to trust our intent to goodness. That's the problem that I see with so many people. They don't trust their intent to goodness, and that's where they kind of get lost. Right. And Joseph's saying, intent can be misused, like some intend for money or a man and that kind of nonsense, but he intends for another, or to see myself clearly and to intend understanding. Exactly. So we have to be very careful with our intents. If we intend crappy stuff, we're going to get crappy results. Intend awesome stuff, stuff that's beyond crappiness, that sublimeness, that abstract awesomeness, that's really what to do. So. And then Rachel says, I watched a YouTuber who said, take a step back and see what your day is actually like. Don't comment, just digest what you see. The results were amazing. Yes. And that's just exactly, Rachel, you're just totally overlapping precisely with what I was saying. We want that overview perspective. We want to look at the world from a life perspective, from a universal perspective. And when we do that, it's that zooming out. And, nice little thing, Ryan, nice to add to also to your dictionary of power. When in doubt, zoom out.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's very silly, but it's very profound. When in doubt, zoom out. In other words, when in doubt, like when you get into trouble, when things are unclear, when they're muddled, just zoom out. Zoom out to that overview perspective. Develop that universal perspective. Now suddenly things become more clear. Like you're feeling crappy, you're annoyed, you're being bitchy, you're being irritated or whatever. And stuff. Okay, when you zoom out and you look at it from your life perspective, now suddenly you look really petty. You look really kind of like, oh my God, no. You see what I mean? In when you were doing it, you thought it was all okay to do. But when you zoom out, suddenly you realize how absurd it is, and then you can't do it anymore. So it's very powerful. When in doubt, zoom out. Very, very powerful. I'm not sure which pun you mean, Rachel. Yeah, she's saying don't comment, just digest what you see. When you have that overview perspective, exactly, that's what you're doing. You're digesting. Yep. And one of the consequences of digestion is you get rid of the crap. Right. All right. Ryan, I love this, man. This great chat, and it's awesome. We'll do this again because this is really, Ryan, actually, our takeaway sessions up until now, we haven't really done them as takeaway sessions because we got so involved with so much more. You were so eager for more, and you pulled all that more out of me. But today, though, you gave your takeaway on things, and this is really what a takeaway session is. Precisely what you did today. You gave your takeaways on stuff, and you see how awesome and profound it is.
Yes.
It led to more. We got involved with the comments, but you, through sharing your takeaway, you consolidated your learning, you connected to your learning, you implemented your learning, you made the learning more real, right? And you expanded on it, and you know what? On this point, that's mine. And maybe also some of it you said, you know what? I need to learn a bit more about this. I need to go a bit before. I don't quite fully have this. So it gave you that awareness, that overview perspective of where you at. And also it made you implement where you at and what you've learned. It's profound, no?
Yeah. Yes.
So
yeah,
we'll do. It made you what? Sorry.
Well, just as I was talking about it, it makes me, think about what I'm actually saying. So it's like, well, then I gotta say this and this.
Why? So yeah. So we'll do more of these, and just let Janelle know that she's next. I really want to hear Janelle's takeaway. I'm very keen on, you and I talk a lot, but I'm very, very keen to hear precisely what I asked you. Celebrate, share with me or with us, what it is that's been valuable and powerful and important to you from the course. That's very powerful. So I'm very keen to hear that from Janelle. Whenever she's ready, just say. I mean, if she wants to do it at midnight, that's fine too. It's all good. Anytime. Just saying, Yeah. So, and Michael, of course, Bina as well, everybody, Right. But I just want to, I particularly was thinking about, it was just in my mind this morning when I woke up. I said, you know what? I really want to get onto a one-on-one with Janelle and really hear where she's at. So that's why Janelle is next, very specific.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everybody else who commented. If I missed you, I'm sorry. And, I don't mean to. It's hard because the comments are on a time delay. So just so everybody knows, they come like a minute or two later. So it's not always directly related, but I do tremendously enjoy the comments. They are powerful and they really leverage us. And that moved us, the comments moved away from just Ryan's takeaway of what's going on with him and where all the value that he's gotten to moreness. And that's the magic of these things, that we connect to. There's always more, And so that's profound in the comments, that might be at some point also appropriate to do without looking at the comments. And, the comments, they can just chat amongst themselves because it can be distracting too. But either way, it was just really profound and powerful and brilliant. Okay. So now, Ryan, we have to chat about something for a little more because Olivia just joined. She was able to, so that's cool. She wasn't before. So brilliant. And yes, thank you, Mary. That was great. So just to recap, Olivia, that it started, as that I wanted to get Ryan to give a takeaway of what has been valuable and useful to him, what he's learned in the course, what he's celebrating, what he's acquired and what he's gained from the course, and we started on that, and Ryan shared, so I can't even remember all. It's so profound. I'm gonna have to relook at the video, which I will, to pull all that out, and that's another thing, Ryan. When we go over the video, make notes, while you're listening to yourself, and then post those takeaway notes. You know what I mean? What you got out, because you said a lot of really awesome stuff, and I want to try and get that habit of posting the takeaways too, so that they stay more permanent. Yes, but you lock them in even further. So Ryan shared like all these profound takeaways of for instance, if I can just test my memory a little bit here, Ryan, you shared the profound takeaway of shifting your mindset deliberately to expecting gifts in life, to seeing stuff as a gift rather than a problem, right? And when you did that, you had this profound anomalous experience of this lady that went completely out of her way, that did all this like ridiculously crazy stuff to help you to basically get out of $2.62, phoning the judge, all this crazy stuff. It was just peculiar and weird, but it was a consequence of you shifting your expectations. That was the deal, right?
Right.
You shifted your intent in other words, to connect back to where we were. Yeah.
Right.
That was huge. Right.
And
So
I cued them.
Exactly. You shifted your intent through the intent. You cued them. You shifted your entire way of being, how you are. You felt everything, and your whole world changes because you made a change internally as a consequence of what we were doing in the course. Right. So your whole deal was about application. The second takeaway was that you were consciously also doing things without believing. You were applying, testing, because that's what you said. You were saying, I didn't know if this was going to work or not, but I was willing to test it. And you were testing it honestly. That's the thing. You gave it an honest, fair test. And then you said through the testing, it worked out and it was all good. And well, you know what? I don't need to believe stuff. All I have to do is go and test it and apply it. Testing, not, belief not required. We just have to apply it and test it. We can check it out for ourselves, in other words. There you go. So if you see something, and that's what we do in the course, no belief required. So, and you said, yes, I'm going to apply that. I'm going to test it. I'm going to check it out. So that was a second thing that you got was really valuable, right? You said the other, actually you started on the point. You said what was really valuable for you was the self-awareness, right? Knowing yourself, getting to know yourself better, right? You said, I'm finding out stuff about myself that I didn't know before. You even said, well, some was not so good, some not so bad. And then we got into a whole conversation about the shadow self, the supposed dark side, how we have to have awareness of all sides of ourselves, the dark, the light, the color, the red, the blue, all the sides. We didn't say color, but we'll add that now. So we have to have awareness of all sides of ourselves, and it's about using them appropriately. And then we went on a whole tangent all about the dark side, and it was a fantastic discussion. But to bring it back, you said, you know what? I learned stuff about myself. At the same token, in the beginning, I was like, of course, I had this really like high energy. I was full of joy and even a euphoria, in a sense, right? We were very positive when we started. And then you had kind of a bit of a dip where you had that awareness settle in about yourself and you sorted things out. And he said, even though there's a dip of energy, it's not a negative. It was actually profoundly positive because it gave you space to reflect and consider, implement, and gain perspective of yourself and make peace with your knuckleheadedness also, right? Your nincompoopery, yeah? So it was very profound.
Or maybe it was it was a sobriety, and it made me a little uncomfortable being more sober.
Yes.
Exactly. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, it's, if you've ever been an addict and, drank or did drugs or whatever, it's kind of like being an addict, and the process of becoming sober is uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can say the more aware you become, the more sober you become, but that process of becoming sober, it can be uncomfortable.
Because it involves detoxing, because that's what makes right. So you went through a little period of spiritual detox, right? That's a fantastically nice analogy. I like that. Spiritual detox, because in order to learn, we have to unlearn first, for the most part. So unlearning is very profound. And that detoxing, in other words, is that unlearning. It's getting rid of all the crap that we have. So put that in, put in there, spiritual detox, put in your dictionary of power. That's a great term. That's fantastic. I love that. I love that concept of spiritual detox. Very, very, very necessary. That's a fantastic conception. That's fantastic.
Now I'm going to have to go.
Yeah, sorry. I was just recapping for Olivia since she joined late. Absolutely. Yeah, no, fantastic. That's awesome. I love it, Ryan. We're going to do much more of this, and just let Janelle know I'm very excited to do with her again. So awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Very cool. She's next. This was fantastic, man. I love it. All right. Bye-bye, Ryan. Love you, man. Love you. That's awesome. Fantastic. All right. Bye-bye.